Welcome to Encounter, where we celebrate putting faith into action and community leaders who live out compassion, grace, and love. We're a program of the Broome County Council of Churches that addresses food insecurity through CHOW and the Greater Good Grocery, provides hospital and jail ministry, builds wheelchair ramps, and assists neighbors with transportation and shopping services through Faith in Action volunteers. We invite you to the conversation. Encounter your neighbors as we learn to walk together in love and kindness.
Good morning and welcome to Encounter. I'm your host today, Joe Sellepack. I'm the Executive Director at the Broome County Council of Churches. One of my favorite portions of Scripture is found in Matthew 19. Here we find Jesus talking with his disciples, and Jesus was sitting outside, and little children were being brought to him. These are the words. Then little children were being brought to him in order that he might lay his hands on them and pray. The disciples spoke sternly to those who brought them. But Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me and do not stop them, for it is such as these that the kingdom of heaven belongs." And he laid his hands on them and went on his way. It's interesting to me that Jesus wanted to bless children, which is the laying on of hands. And it seemed that at times the disciples thought that there was more important work to be done than blessing children. After all, children don't have any of the clout or the notoriety that goes along with a title or having prestige or having a place of power or prominence. But instead, Jesus takes time to bless children, to be with children. And so I have always found that to be part of my ministry as a pastor as well as a director at the Broome County Council of Churches. And one of the organizations in our area that really works directly with children, helping bless children and being involved in the life of children, is the Wyoming Conference Children's Home. And to help us talk a little bit about this is George Dermody. He is the executive or director, CEO of the Wyoming Conference. Welcome to Encounter today, George.
Thank you very much, Joe. It's a real pleasure and an honor to be here.
So let's talk a little bit about the place of children within ministry and within congregations. Why would Jesus do that? And why would he take time to bless children?
Well, I think that we're talking about really the essence of creation and the ongoing development of our world, and to see we all see the beauty of children, the promise of children, the hope and the opportunity. And I think Jesus certainly wanted to help everyone, I think, understand, even in his time and today, to see the value and the dignity and the precious nature that children provide in our world.
Now, at my Rotary Club, you were just at my Rotary Club
Yes.
like last week, I think.
Yes.
And you were talking there about how we were all created in the image of God and likeness of God, and that you start from that beginning part, and that children, the reason that we treat children with dignity and respect has to do with the fact that we're all part of that creation order, right?
Exactly. I mean, we are I think, called to support and to love one another, and where to start other than with children. And certainly, as I mentioned, that has been a driving force for me in my career, and in seeing the work that I have done my entire life in not-for-profit human services, really as a part of a ministry, as a part of a way to live out my faith and to live out my belief in humanity and what we're all called as disciples to work to build the kingdom together.
Now, I just learned this morning that you actually have a Master's of Divinity, so you have a ministry background.
Yes. I've always been, I think, fascinated and called at the intersection of faith and of our work in terms of what we're doing. And so for me, work places like the Children's Home, and certainly especially like the Children's Home, is an opportunity to give. And certainly in giving, I've received so much in my life and my career as an opportunity to learn from children and families, and also to try to give back, to support and build up communities.
So how is the Wyoming Conference Children's Home evolved?
Yes. I think, we have a long and wonderful history of going on 115 years now, and certainly I think our origin story is really fascinating, that it was a group of Methodist deaconesses. Really, we talk about 4 Maine women who they saw a need and they responded. And I think that is important, and there was a need to care for children who were orphaned, who were alone, who needed care. And in fact, on our Hillcrest campus, there still is one of the original buildings.
Oh, wow.
It's been moved, but it was a part where they eventually took access to a farm and created a place for children to be cared for. And from that origin, from that beginning, I think we've evolved and grown in our understanding of how to support children and families, of how to help build up communities. But really it's, we're grateful and have kind of an unbroken line from the love that those women had, and how we try to live that out today in our world.
And it's interesting to me that, you have, James will say, true religion is this, that we help widows and orphans in their distress, and that we keep ourselves unspotted from the world. It seems to me as if orphans are very important to the life of faith as well. So making sure that people have the connection, the family, the place where they can feel where they feel like they're a part of something is very important. Widows, of course, experience it too from a different perspective, but especially when you deal with a patriarchal kind of society and all the rest of it. And I know you don't deal with widows, but you are dealing with orphans.
Yeah.
You are dealing with kids who may not be connected to someone, and allowing them to have to feel that connection that children need in order to thrive.
Yeah, there's something that just has made the news that has really captivated me, which is really kind of speaks to, I think, what we all have known or done. And there's a study, an 85-year-old study, longitudinal study of tracking what goes into having a healthy and positive life.
Right.
And they've worked with people. And the single most important thing were positive, healthy relationships.
Yeah.
And I think so much of what you look at in our society, people who are disconnected, where their relationships maybe have broken with family, with their community, with, just engaging with society. So I think if people wanted to really, what does the Children's Home do? What is really our secret? I think it is about trying to meet people of all ages where they're at and helping them build, rebuild, and develop positive, supportive relationships to help them now and in the future.
And you really see the fallout of that in a lot of ways, where you're currently working. I mean, you see what happens when the pressures on families get to the point where the children become the victims.
Yes.
So how do you help that?
Again, when I talk about the evolution of things for in over a century, we are the Children's Home. But first and foremost, I would hope that your listeners, the people watching this program, would come to understand that we are a family-centered program.
Right.
That we are there to support families, meet people where they're at, and then really try to walk with them in their journey to overcome the barriers, the obstacles, the things that they have had to encounter. I mean, even in this wonderful community that we're in, we encounter people who are dealing with, generational poverty.
Right.
Dealing with, struggles and the loss of loved ones, the loss of economic opportunity, the inability to, maybe make those connections. And so our plan is to meet people, connect with them, and say, how can we walk together? How can we grow and develop and improve? And so certainly people see that often with the children who are not living in their own home, who are at the children's home for a while. But also there are hundreds of young people in this community that we're supporting who are living in their own homes this evening, who may be in a foster home or an adoptive home. But even, and I think when we talk about the evolution of happening, that we are sending counselors, we are sending supportive adults, therapeutic adults into homes, into schools, all with that purpose of saying, how can we support and how can we help you grow and develop where you're at?
It's a very important thing to remind people that you have the campus up at Hillcrest, but you do a lot of work in the community with adoption services and as well as with foster care.
Foster care, and then and certainly the term preventive services, doing in-home work.
Right.
We work with young people who might be involved in the juvenile justice system. We work with young people who may have families who may have their first encounter with the Department of Social Services, but also with people who are, young people referred by schools or daycare centers, child care centers. I think I sometimes use the analogy of a health system, of a hospital system.
Yeah.
The campus can be somewhat to kind of like a hospital,
right?
Or that inpatient care. But our health systems are so much bigger now, with outpatient, with telemedicine, with walk-ins, with urgent care. And I think that kind of model, and and no one is meant to stay in the hospital for a long time.
Right.
And the model is it's often when people go into a hospital, the sense is, how quickly can I get back home? Mm-hmm. How quickly can I move to outpatient? And that really is a model that we use in human services, that our campus are for young people only for those who need it and for only as long as they need it. And so we really try to work to help prepare communities. If I could, I'd just tell you a story that I think illustrates that so much. The Children's Home works with young people throughout the southern tier.
Right.
I think we're in 18 counties right now. But there was one particular community that would send young people to the Children's Home. Mm-hmm. And we'd be like, this young person, we think they're ready to return. They're ready to go back home. And the response was, well, we don't have supportive services. We don't have the ability to care for them at home. And so our response was, let us help you build that local community support. We started with one person whose job was to recruit new foster families.
Oh, wow.
And we started doing that. We then moved to how can we provide community supports? How can we have people working with young people in the evenings, the afternoons, and the weekends? And in that county, not too far from here, we now have 75 people who are residents of that community, living, working, who are caring for the young people in that community. So occasionally still a young person comes to our campus, but we know that when we're able to help them return to that community is more equipped to care for their young people. And that's the really kind of the story that we're trying to create all throughout the southern tier and really all throughout central New York as where we see our core service area.
My guest today is George Dermody, and we've been talking about his work at the Wyoming Conference Children's Home as executive CEO at the organization. And one of the things that I've appreciated about the work that you've done is the work that that we've been able to do collectively. We've been able to do together as far as trying to break down some of the barriers that may exist between children and community service and other kinds of things. And at Rotary, you said that sometimes you get the kids at your facility, they get told that they're bad children, but they're really not. They're just kids that have been dealt a bad hand, and there's a difference between that and a bad kid. And I liked what you had to say about that.
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about what we?
Thank you again. The young people we meet have experienced tremendous pain, tremendous trauma, things that they didn't ask for, things that perhaps they couldn't control, but they also exhibit a tremendous resiliency,
Right.
a tremendous sense of hope, a tremendous sense of growing and developing. We have a special program at the Children's Home where we work with a very talented musician who helps young people write and create their own music.
Oh, wow.
And it's their voice, it's their style, and the children all have an assignment, however they'd like to do it. One is they often create what they call their pain song, which maybe talks about what they've dealt with. But they also, in the project, create their triumph song.
Oh, wow.
Which talks about their belief and their joy and what they want to do. And the young people that I have the privilege of working with, they're often fearful, they're often unsure, but they are hopeful, and they are optimistic. And I want to thank you, and certainly the Council of Churches, for the wonderful work that you do and the fact that you have allowed our young people to often do what's the most powerful therapeutic thing for them, and that is to help others and to help someone. We often think of, what are we going to do for these children? It's often give them an opportunity to use their gifts and talents, give them an opportunity to show their empathy, their giving, and their creativity. So the Faith in Action program has been wonderful. The fact that the council has allowed our children to come and to work and to be a part of that and do that, it's really wonderful.
Yeah.
I would certainly also like your listeners to know another way, and based on our work and seeing that we're doing is, so be I think our 4th year now. Every summer we take a week and we send young people and staff on an Appalachian service project.
Right.
Where they go down to West Virginia, they go down to Kentucky, and they work and they help others. And they spend a day, whether it's doing demolition or renovation. I think last year they helped put a floor in a family's house. First time that they had one, and they helped side a house and put the skirting under a trailer so that the family would be warmer that winter. And to have the young people go and feel so needed and wanted. And I'll remember the very first time we sent someone, the young person came back and we were asking what they liked about it, what they really valued, and they talked about what they saw, and they talked about using tools, but the one person said, what I really liked the most, when I was working there with others, I was just a kid from Binghamton.
Wow.
I wasn't a kid in a group home.
Well, yeah.
I wasn't a children's home kid. I was a kid from Binghamton, and I was helping like everyone else. And it really was powerful. And those experiences through the council, through things that we create and do, they are really kind of break down those stereotypes of they're not bad kids or kids acting out, but really they're young people looking to find their place and to find how they can fit into our society and our world.
I know in family therapy, one of the things that they talk about is that children are generally the identified patient of a family system that has kind of gone awry. And so oftentimes when a child is acting out, it's really not the child acting out of the fact that they're a bad kid, but like you had said before, their fear, their trauma, the various things that kind of gone on in their life have led them to act out in a specific way. And generally speaking, if you can help the leaders of the family, which would, in this case would be the mother and the father, or whoever is in charge of the family, you can deal with their relationships, then the child will generally at that point become more productive, more giving, more a part of the system itself. It seems backward, but the kids are actually the identified patient, right?
Right. Yes, and obstacles don't fall away at a certain age.
No, they don't.
Or they don't go away all of a sudden you became a parent. And you look at whether it's economic uncertainty, the loss of a job, not obtaining a certain education or skill, or the pain of a family breakup, the pain of abuse and neglect. So I think, we really have to work against this notion that often that it's, I meet very few, when I say bad parents, I meet parents who are struggling,
exactly.
who have stress, who overcome things. And I think one of the most powerful lessons that I have learned that has carried me throughout my career is when you can make this, when you meet a mom, she 3 children on her own, really struggling economically, and people wanted to, instead of pointing fingers, well, why aren't your kids at school every day, or why aren't you doing better, or why is this happening? When you can look and say, tell me how you're doing so well. How are you managing to get a meal on that? You're feeding your kids, you're clothing them, you're getting them up. Because I often think that, if we look at the struggles that people have, and we look at how they're doing often the best they can. And I have operated throughout my career, and certainly at the children's home, we try to embody, parents love their children.
They do.
They want their children to do well. No other parent wakes up and says, today I want to make a poor choice for my child.
Right.
But those poor choices happen. Right. And we need to help address them, and we need to work through them. But I think it is it's a guiding really axiom for us to say, how do we meet people where they're at, see what's their strengths are, and how we can work together and to support them, and to make sure that we're not overlooking things that have happened, but we're saying that are these symptoms that we need to address, and what can we utilize to help you build a better life for yourself and for your family.
And that seems to me as if that would be maybe what Jesus was all doing back when we started the program. We read that part from Matthew 19. That's the blessing that we give to children. It's the laying on of hands. It's reminding children that they're important, that they're treating them with dignity, with respect, and then offering them an avenue or a door that they can walk through in order to live into the promise that they inherently have.
Yes. Yeah. And I think to see that promise and to realize that there are different pathways to fulfilling that promise.
Right.
Certainly one of the great advances in our working in human services and working with young people over the last couple decades is understanding, like example, brain science.
Right.
To understand that the brain of a young person, and the brain of anyone who has experienced trauma, things that we've learned about people who have come back from war and conflict, that the brain pathways are actually different. So the learning is different. And how do we teach those skills, and how do we help people? So I think for so much for us is the goal is always the same. How do we help you live, each person, each child, a happy, healthy, productive life? The skills that it may take, the opportunities, the time, the repetitive nature, the support, that can be different, and that can be unique. And certainly, I think at the children's home, one of the things that we've tried to do that I think certainly comes from Scripture is that sense of unconditional caring.
Yeah.
How can we meet you where you're at, love you where you're at, and help you grow and fulfill your calling and your purpose.
One of my favorite illustrations of early childhood development was, it actually occurred in some of the experiments, and they did some terrible things to children back at the turn of the 19th into the 20th century. They did some absolutely horrific things to children. But one of the things that they did was they took children away from relationships. They wanted to figure out what inerrant language a child would speak in order for them, if they were taken away from human relationships. So they assumed that children would either speak Hebrew or Greek. Can you believe it?
Wow.
And so they would put a child in isolation, and what they wanted to figure out what was their inherent language, and what they found instead was that without healthy relationships, that those children actually died. They got sick. There were when they were removed from human touch, human interaction, and so this has led to the whole idea that children actually learn through mirroring.
Yes.
And so without someone to hold them, without someone to touch them, without bouncing them on your lap, and it actually talked a lot about, like even, when we begin talking to children, we use, especially a baby, we use,
Yeah.
we go to their level, and they put their hands on your face and your mouth, and they're learning a little bit about who they are as a human being in order for them to get into that point. So it actually is why I think the work of the Wyoming Conference Children's Home is so important, is because you're showing them that they're important. You're coming to them on their level. You're meeting them at the point of their need, and you're being a human and a caring person with those children at that point.
Yeah.
It's an important work that you do.
Thank you for that, and thank you for acknowledging that. And I think, again, the essence of relationships in the interpersonal, in our faith communities, in our larger communities, so much of this is about relationships. And in some ways, I feel blessed that we have the opportunity to try to create relationships and to work with young people and their families at a time of particular need. And I just really quickly evidence that, like with our alternative school that we have. Yeah. And our ability to be, young people, they haven't been able to find success in their local school or in their home.
Thank you for being on today, George.
Thank you.
It's been a great having you on. And for all of you, be kind and considerate to each other today. Have a great day.
Joe, thank you.